Oh, how perceptions change on today's episode of Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Minnesota Twins podcast. Today is Tuesday, December 7th, and I'm your gracious host, Nash Walker. Thank you for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms. Again, this is Nash Walker, writer at Twins Daily, lifelong Twins fan, bringing you 5 days a week coverage on the Minnesota Twins. I want to talk about perceptions today and how quickly those perceptions can change. And we're going to look back because sometimes you can kind of convince yourself that you saw things coming or that you were reading in the tea leaves or you could have predicted this. I want to go back to general feelings about the Twins over the last, let's do 4 or 5 years. As we look toward 2022 and as we kind of set our minds about what to expect in 2022, because basically what an offseason is you're building expectations, right? You're building expectations for that next season. That's an offseason. You think of the Padres last year, built their expectations so high and the view of them as a clear 100 winner. I mean, it looked like they were going to win 100 games with Darvish and with Blake Snell and with Joe Musgrove and with Tatis and with Manny Machado. It looked like a true juggernaut in the NL West. And what happened? They finished under 500. They missed the playoffs, and it was a terrible year. And that offseason doesn't really matter at that point, right? Now their perception has definitely changed. It's like, oh boy, what do we have here now? And we traded away a bunch of prospects for these pitchers. Now what to expect in 2022? Well, what's going to dictate what to expect in 2022? The offseason, right? And what happened the year before, of course. And I think there's sometimes too much weight on that, on what happened the year before, and we'll talk about that today. Had a discussion yesterday, 3 routes I think the Twins could, should, might take after the lockout. So go check that one out from yesterday. But let's talk about perception. So after 2017, which was obviously, it was an amazing accomplishment to make the wild card game after the second half that the Twins had. You get 140 games from Byron Buxton. Eddie Rosario is outstanding. Things changed though. Like the team kind of reframed itself going into 2018, but there was this sense definitely that, with this new front office, things were different, and this was going to be a winning front office, and everything you'd been told about Derek Falvey and Thad Levine proved to be kind of true in their first year in 2017. 2018 is a disappointment. A lot of one-year deals flopped. It's Joe Mauer's last season. Paul Molitor's fired, and then Rocco Baldelli comes in 2019. So the perception, here's what I'm trying to get at here. The perception going into 2019, and the Twins had signed Nelson Cruz, signed Jonathan Scope, CJ Cron, brought on board Martin Perez. It wasn't on paper a great team. It was a team expected to probably win 78 to 82 games and finish maybe second in the Central, maybe third in the Central. I mean, we didn't know how bad Detroit and Kansas City were going to be, but the White Sox and the Twins, I guess, going into that year, felt like they could finish around each other. And I think there was an expectation the Twins would be better than Chicago. Chicago was kind of in their rebuilding, like still rebuilding in 2019. But the Twins just blew those expectations out of the water, as we know. And they turned the perception completely from, we don't really know what we have here, to this team is really, really good. And this team has a bunch of good prospects coming. And you looked, and what was most exciting about 2019, as we think back on that magical regular season, what was most exciting to me was not just how good they were. It was that the future was so bright. Max Kepler had broken out. They had Rosario. Byron Buxton was amazing in the first half before he ran into the wall in Miami. Miguel Sano had an amazing second half. Like, their core, Mitch Garver, was otherworldly. Their core really broke out and came together in 2019 and all had such great seasons. And Rosario was the worst among them on a numbers basis and still drove in 100 runs, right? So, I mean, it was a remarkable season, and that's what was so exciting because you had Kepler locked up. Jorge Polanco is your starter in the All-Star game at shortstop for the American League. Like, you have these guys locked up. this window's wide open. We're ready to go. Let's have an offseason going into 2020 and let's be one of the best teams in baseball in 2020. Why not? There's your perception. Think back, that wasn't that long ago. We're talking 2 years ago right now. I was sitting here doing this podcast, talking about the Twins, talking about how exciting this team was and how exciting it will be moving forward. And now that perception, just 2 years later, has shifted into what do we have? What does the future look like? And everything's kind of in question for the Twins, not only this offseason, but in 2022, 2023, and beyond. Who's going to be here? Who should be here? Who should they invest in? Who should they not invest in? When 2 years ago, there's no question. There was no question. I mean, the future was so bright with this core, with Royce Lewis coming, with Alex Kirilloff coming, Trevor Larnach coming. Some of those things are still true. We're still waiting for Lewis, still waiting for Kirilloff and Larnach to kind of establish themselves as regulars. But a lot of that perception has shifted in just 2 years. And it's fun to look back and just remember how different it was. And I want to turn this into a discussion of how it can be different this time around in the other direction, because it can change on a dime. I think there's this expectation in baseball and in sports. A team's very, very good and they have good young players. There's this expectation that like the next 5 years are going to be just golden for that team, right? Because they had all these breakouts. But a couple things change. You know, Max Kepler goes back to the guy he was before 2019. Jorge Polanco's ankle impacts him in 2020. He bounces back, of course, and has a phenomenal 2021. Miguel Sano's inconsistencies come back. Mitch Garver's dealing with a ton of injuries in the last 2 years. Byron Buxton dealing with a ton of injuries the last 2 years. So things change, and a couple things change. A couple things don't go right in these areas, and all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh, this core is breaking down. Eddie Rosario's non-tendered. Like what's happening to this core? And it can crumble rather quickly. Let's talk about it more after this word from BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as the football season continues the march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to their new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. DirecTV Stream is outstanding. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friends log in for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Thanks again for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms. So getting back to this perception thing, where am I going with this? What I mean by this is the offseason doesn't dictate everything. And oftentimes the offseason is incorrect. The expectations going into the season with baseball, with sports, are incorrect, right? A lot of times. I mean, just take the Twins, for example. Not just the Twins this year, expected to be at the top of the Central, or at least with the White Sox at the top of the Central. The 2019 club, their over-under, I think, was 80 and a half, 81 and a half. They end up winning 101 games. It's a 20-win swing. I mean, these things are not always correct, and these expectations are not always correct. Now, there needs to be some basis for why you think it will be incorrect, right? There needs to be some basis for that. And I think the Twins, what I'm pushing for, what I've pushed for this whole winter so far, just put yourself in a position where you can surprise and change that perception. Put yourself in a position where you are capable of doing that. In 2019, they put themselves into a position to do that by getting we're going to use the win total as just a route here. By getting their win total, their over under to like 80 and a half, they gave themselves an opportunity to blow it out of the water. If your win total is expected to be 71, 72, it's very difficult, unless you're the Giants last year, to blow that out of the water. If that makes any sense, you have to build a floor for your team, but you also need to have that upside. Now, sometimes it's one player. one player will come in and really impact everybody else. For the Twins, that was Nelson Cruz, but they got a ton from Jake Odorizzi in 2019. Jose Barrios was Jose Barrios, was amazing in the first half, struggled in August, but overall, very good season. Martin Perez was good for the first month. Michael Pineda was exceptional before he got suspended. The bullpen was terrific in the second half, with Tyler Duffy breaking out and Trevor May having a ridiculous second half. Taylor Rogers was amazing all year. A lot of things went right, and they put themselves in a position for a lot of things to go right in 2019. This team right now is not in a position to be able to do. They just don't have enough pitching. They don't have enough players. And the difference between this team and another team that might be trying to get in and trying to put themselves in a position to blow expectations out of the water is the Twins have an established good offense. They have a legitimately good offense, and that's without Alex Kirilloff. That's without Royce Lewis, who could be up soon, or Austin Martin. They have hitters coming, Jose Miranda. They have others coming. They already have a very good offense, right? It's not an elite offense. I think it can be, and I'm going to make that case all offseason. I think like 2019, the Twins offense can be elite in 2022 if Kirilloff hits his stride, if Kepler's a little bit better, if Polanco does what he just did again, if Sano can be more consistent, and Miranda, Kirilloff, Larnach, and others contribute, and Donaldson's healthy, and Buxton's healthy, and Garver's healthy. I mean, this lineup can be, the sky's the limit if all those things happen. But even though a couple of those things happen, I think this offense can be very, very good in 2022. They already have a good offense. They have an offense in place. That's a really good example, actually. Their offense is in a position to blow expectations out of the water in 2022 because they have legitimate upside by re-signing Buxton, by having Donaldson. We know the upside's high. Sano, his upside is high. And Garver, his upside is high. If those guys hit, literally and figuratively, hit on their upside, the sky's the limit for the offense. Like I'm saying, as a pitching staff, you got to put the pieces in place for that to happen equally. And that's why I'm pushing for high upside pieces to change the perception, change the feeling for 2022, and give yourself a chance to reach the heights, right? And to surprise people, because it can change so quickly and you can turn this thing around so quickly. I think there's this feeling and this sense like, oh, you had a bad season, you finished in last place. That must mean like it's going to be a couple of years before you compete again. And in some cases, that's true. And in some cases, it was a bad season. The pitching broke down. The offense wasn't great at all times. Didn't hit with runners in scoring position for a lot of the first half. But we can turn this around. We still have the pieces in place. Let's put ourselves in a spot where we're able to turn this around. The Twins can be that. I'm not saying they are that. They have to work to be that. They have to put the pieces in place intentionally to be that in 2022. And they can. I'm telling you, they can. As crazy as that sounds, they can do it. They can put themselves in a position to exceed expectations next year. A lot's going to be said, too, about the Central. I mean, I think the Tigers are getting better for sure. I think the Royals have to be getting better. I mean, you have to be getting better if you're those two teams with all the high draft picks they've had. You have to have some good players coming. So those teams are going to be tougher. Do I see the Detroit Tigers becoming a legitimate force in the American League Central in 2022 or even 2023? I don't. I think they are putting themselves in a position, though, to reach their upside, right? By signing Javier Baez, a high upside player. Eduardo Rodriguez has some upside as well. By signing those players and with the players currently on their roster, they are putting themselves in a position to have upside. Jonathan Scope has upside as well. We saw what he did in the first half of 2019, his power, and CJ Cron too for that team. Just so much fun, especially that first half. But they've put themselves in a position to reach that ceiling. What needs to be said with this too is what happens if you don't reach that ceiling? Well, you put forth, let's say just hypothetically, the Twins go the route that I think they should take, which is signing and acquiring high upside pitchers, would be Carlos Rodon, someone like Frankie Montas, signing guys like that, trading for guys like that who can help you. What's the downside? Well, Rodon's hurt all year, which is absolutely in the cards, right? He's hurt all year with the injury history. Frankie Montas doesn't take that next step. He's still good, doesn't take that next step. Now you're out prospects. Now you're out Rodon, the money you gave to him, whatever that means. And things don't go well again. You can change, though, this offseason trajectory and how people feel about the 2022 Twins, and give yourself that chance to reach it if Rodon does stay healthy. If someone like Montas takes that next step, you give yourself a chance to exceed those expectations in a way that we didn't even think was possible on December 7th. So this is a long-winded way of saying, as I've said all offseason, they should be going after high upside players like they did in 2019. Like they gave themselves a chance. And you look back at these teams. So let's look at the last 3 years. 2019, elite offense, pretty solid pitching staff. 2020, elite pitching staff. That was an elite staff. Kenta Maeda was outstanding. He was the second best pitcher in the American League last year. Jose Barrios was good in the second half of that shortened season. Now, there are some caveats to that. They only played Central teams. It was the worst offensive divisions. Or was the pitching very good in the Centrals last year? Also, with the Reds staff was great. The White Sox staff was better. Cleveland staff always good. They had Bieber. I mean, that Plesac, they had a good staff too, and the Twin staff was nice as well. So they had an elite pitching staff and a terrible offense in 2020. Then in 2021, they have a terrible pitching staff and a solid offense. So you've seen the range of outcomes with their staff and with their offense over the last 3 years. And that alone should tell you that things can change. Like this went from an elite pitching staff in the shortened 2020 season to a truly horrific staff in 2021. This went from an elite offense in 2019 to a horrific offense in 2020. Like these things change, rearrange, and so do I, is a quote from J. Cole. These things change, man. They rearrange, and so do I. Everyone changes, rearranges. The Twins can put themselves in a position to be better. I mean, they can put themselves in a position to compete for the Central. I don't think that's crazy to say. They have the offense in place. And that's why this is so frustrating for me. Like, don't they know that? Don't they know that? Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't feel that way. And they think the best thing long-term for this team is to see what they have in 2022 with their young pitchers and to see what they have in Jose Miranda and to see what they have in these prospects. And I'm not saying that's the worst route possible. I just think it could be a massive disappointment when you have a chance. You have a chance to compete next year, and you won't take that chance. Like, you won't take those risks. It's frustrating, especially because the White Sox really haven't done anything either. They're going to be good, but it's not like they're the Dodgers. It's not like they're this powerhouse that, we have to overcome the White Sox. Also, the expanded playoffs, I think, are coming. So I don't get it. I really don't. Maybe they'll surprise us after the lockout with some trades and signing Rodon or signing whoever. There's not a lot of guys left to sign on the pitching front. Maybe they'll surprise us. I just don't get it, because I think you can change the perception of this team. I think you can change the trajectory of this team with a good offseason, and they're just not having it. Thank you so much for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all podcast platforms. Thank you again for listening. Follow me on Twitter at NashWalker9. Follow the show at Locked On Twins. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Go Twins. Thanks so much.